This video is sponsored by you. Links to support the channel are in the description, along with the Discord. So, how does an operator fall off in Arknights? There are no balance patches in this game, the closest thing being modules, which, as minor and insignificant as they can be sometimes, are outright buffs. Sometimes they take an operator whose gameplay experience is on par in Dread with browsing r/0 sanity memes for 10 minutes like Viviana and take them straight to a solid A tier. Well, this video is here to answer this question. How does an operator fall off and why? First, I need you to understand something. If an operator ages poorly, it can't be just due to Powercreep, which I know is the easy answer a lot of you will gravitate towards. However, it can't be correct, because many technically power-crept operators, like Myrtle or Saga, still see a lot of success and use. This means that their kit must have been flawed in some way all along, and the meta progressed far enough where those faults actually matter. We will examine 5 operators today, from least interesting to most interesting to discuss, but first we need to establish what falling off means. To fall off, an operator must have been good at some point before. For example, this video by the OMNI Blade on the same topic that released while I was working on this, so now I look like a copycat, mentions Helagur, which is a very strange choice. Helagur never quote-unquote fell off. He was always trash from the moment of his birth, which means we also can't include people like Shining, who were always abysmal dogshit. So hello there, Arknights' most hated YouTuber here, once again having trouble finding worthwhile comments to put in the intro. Seriously, what is going on, guys? I check all the usual places filled with joyless hacks like Arknights Official and Twitter, and all I find is nice people and fan art. I can't start calling myself Arknights' most mildly controversial YouTuber now, can I? Silverash, back on launch and until Surtr released, was the best operator in the game. Back then, there was a running joke where the community would say Silverash dealt arts damage, because his DPS was so outrageously high compared to the stats of the poor Year 1 reunion bastards that he seemed to completely ignore defense, as he imprinted his size right into the enemy's soul. And even after Surtr, Silverash remained a very strong operator for years to come. It was only in Year 4, when Mlynar released, that Silverash was finally allowed to go into retirement. Mlynar basically is Silverash, but with better damage and better uptime. A shockingly good 40% for what he does, which is delete everything in front of him with his fat f***ing horsecock. Plus, he has impressive bulk, along with a talent that nullifies enemies with global attacks. Silverash always had 2 problems. The first is that he's extremely vulnerable during skill tree. The second is that his skill tree has a very high SP cost, meaning you can only use it like twice per stage. In fact, it was actually better to retreat and redeploy him, because that would charge his skill tree faster. Nowadays, Silverash is relegated to being a niche unit. He is still a great invisibility removal and gives minus 10% redeployment time to the entire team, which is situationally useful. Going back to the OMNI Blade's video, he mentions Schwarz fell off because of Pozyomka. This is a correct statement, but the video doesn't really address the fact that Pozy also fell off. The reason why Schwarz fell out of the meta is very very simple. All she does is deal damage and have gay sex with Ceylon. There is no heterosexual explanation for this behavior, and new operators just plainly deal bigger numbers uga booga. Pozyomka has a different problem. Her damage is actually still competitive for modern day standards. Here's a graph comparing her to Typhon and Ray, she's the blue line. Pozy doesn't get power crept in DPS, but rather in comfort of use. You need to place her and the typewriter in such a way where the enemy is right in front of Pozyomka and right in front of the typewriter, while also putting the typewriter in one of the 4 adjacent tiles to Pozy to maximize its defense shred. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, this is not a setup you can easily achieve very often. Putting the summon in the 4 adjacent tiles while also having them both hit the boss at the same time in Pozy's front tiles is so specific I'd give up on it entirely. Compare this to someone like the previously mentioned Ray or Typhon, where they have huge ranges, can be put effectively anywhere, and only need the boss to step foot in the death zone to work. At one point, Pozyomka really was the best DPS in the sniper class, but those days are long gone. I hear she's busy facing some Durin sexual misconduct allegations currently. 2024 really was the worst year to be a Durin, wasn't it? Now, if the 2 operators so far are actually still pretty decent, just outshined by better or more comfortable options, Siege is a case where she is just bad. Siege's fall-off is less the natural progression of power creep and more of a methodical and intentional murder. Given the bar to surpass Siege was so low you needed an excavator to find it, but still at launch she was the de facto vanguard, mainly by process of elimination. Her main niche was being an early game DPS. You'd place her down for cheap to handle the early waves of enemies while making some DP. Then Myrtle happened. Just by virtue of existing, Myrtle completely erased the early game DPS niche. It's not a niche that is realistically worth considering anymore, because you just put down Myrtle, let her do her diabolical work of Satan, and now Wishadel is your early game DPS. This left Siege without her main niche, and then it just kept happening. A second Myrtle hit the Siege towers, then Bagpipe, then about a dozen more better early game lane holders, and finally Saga. Saga is a completely unapologetic and direct power creep for Siege. That's what I mean when I say it feels intentional. You can watch this video for more details, but Saga straight up has the same kit but better. And even then, Saga fell off too, which should really put into perspective the position Siege is in. But she still has one niche. Siege is the only operator that is able to ignore SP lockout. For the uninitiated, SP lockout is the state in which operators cannot gain SP, usually shown by the SP bar becoming orange. Thanks to her talent, Siege ignores this. During the LS4 Slug Wave, for example, you can activate her skill tree twice in a row. Except I just lied to you. Pepe ignores it too. Yeah, not only did she steal the limited operator spot from this beautiful dark-skinned NPC goddess, she also stole Siege's last remaining niche. There truly is no more place for this poor lion anymore. Back then she was the #1 vanguard, but nowadays... Did you know I'm actually the rightful heir to the throne of Victoria? I don't want to actually be a queen though, of course not. Just put the fries in the bag, little sis. Phantom's pronouns are they/them, not because they're non-binary, but because they're literally two people. And not even that was enough to carve the slightest crumb of a niche against Texas and Yato. There are many ways in which you can explain why he fell off, but I feel the most succinct way is to put it like this. Phantom was a great addition to your team, providing heli drop damage to pick off particularly dangerous enemies, or be a very temporary lane holder. Texas and Yato fundamentally change how you play the game. No longer a tower defense, but rather a tower offense, where you actively slap your operators against the enemies rather than passively building a little waifu fort. Phantom S2 deals a lot of damage, Texas S2 and Yato skill 2 deal more, and their AoE as well. Phantom S3 pushes and is able to slow, bind or stun for 4.5 seconds. Depending on the enemy, you might prefer stun over bind and vice versa. With Phantom, you get no control over it as it is RNG. If you want a stun in a 3x3 area, use Texas Alter. If you want a bind in a 3x3 area, you can use... oh god, damn it. So let's talk about why there being two of them doesn't help. Instinctively, you'd think this would make them stand out enough to have a distinctive niche. But let's think about it. What can you use the clone for? You could use them to effectively double Phantom's damage, but even then, Texas and Yato deal more. Or you could use it to get another roll at the skill 3 RNG, which is good, but again, you shouldn't be relying on RNG in the first place. Finally, you could use them to pick off two separate enemies in two separate parts of the map at the same time. But how often does it happen that you absolutely need to pick off two separate enemies at the same time to justify the clone? I reckon it doesn't. Even if there are multiple enemies you wish to heli drop your sexy schizophrenic onto, Arknights usually makes them stand still for a little while, giving you more than enough time to kill them both with just one Texas or one Yato. Alternatively, you can use any other heli drop operator for the other guy, like Surtr or Ines. What I'm saying is that realistically, the situation in which having a clone would shine is not going to happen. A while back, I made a top 10 best operators video, and a few comments mentioned how we've reached the point where Chum the Holungday isn't even worth a honorable mention. And that is kind of crazy to think about. On release, she was one of the 4 contenders for the best operator in the game, along with Surtr, Bagpipe and Ling. But while those 3 still hold up pretty well, Shotgun seems to have pulled a magic trick on us and disappeared. So what the f happened? Let me repeat myself. If an operator ages poorly, it can't be just due to power creep. Their kit must have been flawed all along in some way. Operators like Myrtle or Saga or Ray, while power-crept, still hold up because their good kit from back then is still a good kit today. Because in Arknights, operators don't change for the most part. Meanwhile, someone like Ash, another operator that fell off, you can watch this video for more details, fell off not only because of power creep, but because her kit was flawed from the beginning. Channed Happiest Days damage falls off and fast. Where Typhon ignores defense in percentage, up to 50%, and Ray has the fattest f***ing attack stat in the world and means to amplify her own damage, the Chum Star gets a flat defense shred. This means that against enemies with high enough defense, your puny little minus 220 defense won't really matter. Meanwhile, Typhon's 50% defense shred will always be effective due to being percentage based, and Ray has such an obscene attack number that even the highest of defense can't do shit against her. In short, Chen from Tuhu's damage doesn't have the attributes that allow other DPS operators to be future-proofed. Her main fault is having a flat defense shred, combined with an attack stat that, all things considered, isn't all that high, at just 1706 with S3 active. For comparison, Typhon has 2021 with S3, and Ray reaches up to a fucking mastodontic 6072 when putting all her buffs and amplifications together. To add insult to injury, her talent too is completely useless and she costs 32 DP. With Myrtle in the game, DP is not a real issue, but you'd still rather have lower costing units when you're able to. And wouldn't you look at that, Ray, Typhon and even Wishadel all cost less. Her other two skills are pointless. S1 is only kinda useful in IS, and S2 is strictly S3 but worse. Chen the Cash Grab's only real niche is being a buff for Wishadel. You see, with the module, there is a 20% chance other sniper operators with ammo-based skills won't consume ammo. Wishadel skill 3 uses ammo. With 6 shots, that comes out to a 73% chance to get at least one extra attack. Now, is it worth it to have an entire separate squad slot for a 32 DP operator just for an RNG chance that Wishadel will attack a couple more times per S3 activation? No, not really. But hey, at least she has a real use. That's more than you can say about Siege or Phantom. That's all, max out your Gummy and go watch the OMNI Blades video. Bye. Thank you for watching and Happy New Year! You know what they say, New Year, New Me. In fact, I am here to give you an early apology for the person I will be becoming this year. Thank you in particular to Good Old Leon, Zilot, Joseph D, Mr. Lair, Bubba OB, Quill Damage, Matthew Nemo, Zephyrinix, The Crazy Lord, Nuppo, Lord Takeo, Nerd Rage! Andre Mule, Mike Reguera, New Takoyaki, Maxi Ossess, Jixter, and Chromechan but JJF. Now, if you'll excuse me, the recent Honkai Star Rail photography event awakened something deep within me. I need to use the cameradoscope on Wowo and ask her to step on me with her fluffy socks while looking at me in disgust like this.